Hello and welcome to WAIC, the Southeast Asia chapter, coming to you from the beautiful city of Kuala Lumpur. I'm Yasmin and I'm your moderator for this session where we'll be discussing the power of AI for socio-economic development or posturing. Now, few would argue against the fact that AI holds the promise of being a game changer in the global economy. AI has been spoken of for decades already before this, but now many would say that, would agree that now is the coming of age of AI. And the innovation of AI is accelerating at a speed like never before. According to statistics from Crunchbase, in the year 2018, AI-related startups venture funding grew by 72%. And AI-based marketing patents reached a CAGR of 30% between 2010 and 2018. Now, businesses and companies, driven by the proliferation of data, technology, and the increasing or the improving availability of talent, are ready to adopt and deploy AI-based solutions and technologies. PwC quoted that AI will potentially uplift the GDP of Southeast Asia to the tune of $1 trillion by the year 2030. But governments, on the other hand, find themselves having to play both the roles of enabling this innovation as well as playing a regulatory role. Now, is there a winning formula to this balancing act? And to have this interesting discussion, we have with us today our esteemed panelists. First of all is the Honorable YB Isha, who is an assemblyman from the state of Johor and who heads the state investment portfolio. We also have Mr. Benjamin Keller, who is responsible for all of digital and technology matters in Hong Leong Group, which is one of Asia's largest conglomerates. And Mr. Jason Chung, who joins us from Shanghai in China. And he is with Innovate, one of the top EV companies in the world right now. We'll also hear from Andrew Xian, who is the chairman and founder of New Access Capital, a VC firm based also out of Shanghai in China. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. But before I go to you, I would like to first invite a special guest, the Honorable Minister Mustafa Mohamad, who is Malaysia's Minister in the Prime Minister's Department with the Economic Development Portfolio, to give us his opening remarks. Datuk Seri, thank you for your time today, and the floor is yours.
Distinguished panelists, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to say a few words at this World AI Conference 2021, the Southeast Asian chapter. This is a very important conference for us in Malaysia, as we have just launched the National Fourth IR Policy on the 1st of July. We hope to learn from global AI experts who have kindly agreed to gather here today. As we all know, COVID-19 has taken about 4 million lives so far. It has also caused a lot of disruption to the global economy. Across the world, technology and innovation have played a crucial role in helping people and businesses respond to the crisis. Technology will prove to be critical in curtailing the pandemic as well as in boosting economic recovery. Prior to the pandemic, the Malaysian government has long encouraged businesses to embrace the digital shift. However, this embrace was happening at a snail's pace, as many preferred the tried and tested methods of running a business. The current crisis has forced everyone to accelerate digital transformation. Indeed, many experts opine that the year 2020 saw years of digital transformation happening in a matter of just a few months. Based on this development, there is a need to escalate our efforts to ramp up the growth of the digital economy. In this connection, we will continue to encourage digital tech companies to do and invest more in this country, thereby enhancing the productivity and competitiveness of our companies, big and small. Ladies and gentlemen, the tech industry is constantly changing and evolving, and the ecosystem is itself in a constant state of renewal. And to ensure the government continues to stay ahead of the curve, we have a strategy and policy framework that could potentially turbocharge the Malaysian digital economy and the tech sector. We've been working very hard to ensure that the environment in this country to do business is sufficiently attractive and compelling. In February this year, the government introduced the My Digital Initiative. The implementation of this policy on digitalization will enable us to seize opportunities emerging from innovative technologies and new business models. The My Digital Initiative also provides direction for our digital transformation journey, which will drive the business sector to compete in a global arena by enhancing their productivity and ability to react quickly to changes in the global economic landscape. Ladies and gentlemen, in my view, there are at least 5 key factors which will contribute to a robust digital and tech ecosystem here in Malaysia. Firstly, the availability of digital infrastructure such as connectivity, cloud and 5G. Secondly, market opportunities for our products and services. Third, the availability of local talent and willingness to bring in foreign talent. Fourth, a supportive regulatory framework. And finally, an avenue to raise alternative financing beyond bank-backed facilities such as venture capital matching programs. While we expect opportunities to arise from technological advancement, we also want to make sure we continue to enhance local expertise and capabilities over time, as well as protect our data and, most importantly, digital sovereignty. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia's national 4th IR policy, which I have mentioned, was released only just a few days ago, aspires to create a conducive ecosystem for Malaysian society, businesses and the government to seize growth opportunities and strengthen our local capabilities. The policy aims to incentivize businesses to adopt 4th IR technology by the year 2022. The lessons of COVID-19 have also taught us that online education and upskilling our workforce will be vital moving forward, as we need to ensure Malaysian citizens are well equipped to take on the jobs of the 4th IR future. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia is at an important crossroads in our economic transformation journey. We have to put in place bold and forward-looking policies to attract new businesses and grow our economic competitiveness. COVID-19 has caused many disruptions in the economic landscape and current business models. Therefore, we have no choice but to accelerate our innovative capacity. With the implementation of policies and initiatives that map out our strategy to embrace technology and innovation, our path to ensuring a better future for all Malaysians will be secured. Thank you for gathering today at this important session. I wish you all the best for the discussions ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, YB Minister, for giving us assurance and reiterating the commitment from the Malaysian government towards enabling and ensuring that technology and innovation plays a very important foundation towards economic development, social-economic development for the country. Let us now go back to our panelists, and may I start with you, the Honorable YB Ishak. Now, YB, you are an investment banker by profession, and you had served in some of the top financial institutions in Malaysia, including the Asian Finance Bank, which is a wholly owned financial institution by the Qatar Islamic Foreign Bank. But in the year 2018, you made a move that many of us, many of us were pleasantly surprised, but you made a move to enter the political scene. Now, the first question I have for you, Honorable Assemblyman, is that for Johor, which is for our international audience, is a state at the southmost part of Peninsular Malaysia. The capital of Johor is only about 3 hours drive to KL, to Kuala Lumpur, and only 20 minutes drive to the regions, to Singapore, which is the region's economic powerhouse. Now, what is Johor's strategy, YB, in catalyzing technology and innovation for the state as well as for the country? And what are your plans to make Johor possibly a preferred digital hub for the nation and for the region? YB?
Thank you, Dato'. That's a very good question. Okay, let me share with everyone here. In terms of catalyzing technology for the state as well for the country, we have introduced the Digital Johor Agenda, and it will focus on rapidly improving the competitiveness of the ICT infrastructure, public service delivery, and the ICT industry while building the capability of the public and private sectors to adopt ICT to seize on the various opportunities. Another point that successful education requires the government and industry stakeholders to collaborate, share resources, and rationalize government structure and processes to provide the seamless world-class ICT-enabled services. Here, I would like to share with everyone, we have initiated the Kulai Iskandar Data Exchange, which is called KIDEX, in Sedana, which is expected to attract investment worth of RM 17.5 billion, is seen as being able to catalyze Johor economy and support Johor to be preferred digital hub. The 745 acres area designated to attract the development of a data center. The area is safely secured and fully equipped with high power energy and water resources, and all critical for the operations of international standard data center. And apart from that, we also initiated JDEC, which is the Johor Digital Economic Center, founded under the Sultanah Fatimah Foundations in year 2020, which the objective to develop Johor as a regional trading hub for economics and to accelerate digital transformation for Johor local businesses and to nurture domestic talents for digital economic growth within the state.
It looks like Johor has got a pretty intense digital transformation agenda. And from what I've heard was that you are creating this clusters of economic zones, like in Sedana, and you mentioned also JEDC and so on. This is with the intention of bringing investors. But technology companies, YB, they are normally pretty complex because technology is continuing, is evolving at such a fast pace. Now, they want assurance that what they're doing will be protected and in a way that the policies and regulations would enable them to do what they want to do best, which is innovate. So what do you think governments, and in this case in specific, the state of Johor, what do you think needs to be in place to get these technology companies, whether foreign or local, to invest in Johor? And therefore, how would this help Johor be more effective and attractive in terms of the innovation and tech policies, Wabi?
Thank you, Dato'. This is a very good question. For your information, that we are fully committed to coordinate closely with the relevant government agencies as to ensure the policies and regulations are in line with the requirements of tech companies. Okay, wide range of incentive at the state and federal levels are also available for tech companies set up business in Johor. For example, of such requirements may include talent policies, ensuring all aspects surrounding talent developments are addressed, such as the knowledge workers, and felicitations, and much more. With these policies already in place, we believe that this will make Johor a viable destination for tech companies and to set up business in Johor.
Okay, all right. For the rest of the panelists' information, the state of Johor as well as companies, local companies, have been very interested in looking at how Johor can develop in its agenda because of the proximity of Johor in a very strategic location, which is, they are, like I mentioned, 3 hours drive from Kuala Lumpur, as well as being 20 minutes away from an economic powerhouse, the regional economic powerhouse, which is in Singapore. And there has been articles about Johor coming up with what is called the special innovation zones. Yeah, and this concept of special innovation zones has been something that is being discussed even at the global level to look into as a suite of policies to attract investors. So maybe for the state of Johor, what are to be the powerhouse of AI, they must also be on the consumption side. It's not only about technology companies coming in to develop products to be consumed globally for export, but also for the consumption for the rest of Johor. Now, what does Johor plan in order to execute to this vision?
Okay, thank you. Of course, planning and education are two different things, right? Our commitment for this is evident through the proposed development of a dedicated special economic zones for innovations with Skyline Innovation City, which calls SIC. Okay, this is set to be a catalyst for AI innovations and other technologies in Johor. SIC is said to be an integral hub for driving AI growth and innovations and talent development in Malaysia generally and Johor specifically. The special zone is to be developed to enhance value creations of Johor to attract investors into SIC, which augurs well with Johor aspirations to be an AI-powered nation. I think with that, sufficient to show and to pledge our commitment to the investors.
Okay, all right. So I think for the other panelists, there was this Johor recently together with SkyMine. Well, I mean, disclosure, I'm with SkyMine, but we have announced very interesting plans to create a special economic zone, a special zone which has got its a set of policies and a set of regulatory policies that will enable the creativity of innovation, specifically for AI. And of course, one of the greatest, one of the most important pillars of any innovation initiative is about talent. So talent creation, talent hubs, in collaboration with the top universities in Malaysia would be one of the key pillars within this SIC. So I think that's interesting. Thank you so much, YB. So now let's move on to Benjamin. Let's move on to the private sector perspective. Now, Benjamin, Hong Leong Group is a globally diversified conglomerate with almost a presence and footprint in any industry that you can think of. The gross assets of gross asset base of Hong Leong Group is more than 40 billion Sing, and your total employee size is 20,000 people globally. Now, this is a huge footprint, very successful, so strongly and successfully entrenched in these traditional business models. And you are responsible, you are the man responsible of making the transformation towards technology and innovation. So tell us, Benjamin, share with us. Obviously, it is something that you know is critical for you to adopt technology in general, as well as, but AI in particular, to accelerate business growth. Now, how are you doing this? Can you do it? And what are the key considerations that you have to have in place in order to make this happen?
Thank you very much. So we look at innovation around the pillars that are meaningful to customers, right? Most innovation in today's landscape is inwardly focused. We look at areas around automation, process excellence, and ultimately, how can we delight the customer? So adopting these various digital solutions are great. They do bring us closer to that finish line. However, with AI at the center, we are seeing differentiated experiences. So putting a chatbot on your website is okay if you have a top 10 Q&A list. But if you're able to put deep learning platforms behind that are able to then really understand the cognitive experience of how somebody needs to interact with a system, you can direct them to the right place much faster and with much more relevance to what they're looking at. So as we look at process automation on the back end, we also explore new technologies that can help us not just digitize today's experience, but really be able to preempt where either the business process needs to go or where the client needs to be directed. So for example, within financial services, of course, there's a lot of work that's being done on robo-advisors. So this is really to help people understand, get educated, be exposed to what's available, and to give meaningful contextual recommendations to people that are fit for purpose. So we're moving away from the notion of let's put more effort towards taking today's piece of paper and making that digitally available, but rather redesigning from the customer journey. So that's where a lot of our activities are. And this, as you rightfully said, in the manufacturing space, AI plays a big role within our quality control systems, within our planning systems. And again, going back to how do we facilitate that customer journey? So B2C use cases or B2B use cases, we definitely have experienced the impact that AI has in terms of making those rich and meaningful experiences.
Okay, so I think what you are talking about is something that technology, people from the technology component, and I've spent more than close to 30 years in the technology industry. But you know, there's always this perspective where people think about technology innovation, and they think that, like AI, for instance, they think about existing business processes, and they just want to digitalize it, right? Whereas what you're talking about is basically starting from scratch. It is basically looking at how do you reinvent, how do you reimagine and re-engineer business processes. But that requires, I mean, knowing what to do is one thing, but getting the buy-in to get it done. You know, how do you, and like I mentioned, Hon Leong Group is successful, 20,000 people with such strongly entrenched business processes and legacies. So Ben, what are the challenges around that? And how do you think you can, as a group, how can you bring about that kind of cultural shift?
Great question. You're absolutely correct. There's no lack of ideas that are out there. The fortunate part for me is most of our decision makers today are actively engaged into digital platforms. So whether it's e-commerce or Facebook, you know, obviously the most famous of which would be, for example, Google. So as we explain what's possible with information, people, I have yet to find anybody who was closed-minded to an idea around the innovation space or how technology can bring us further into that value chain. To your point, execution is the hurdle. People need to have formal systems in place for them to be able to manage a project, for them to be able to measure success. And when the digital innovation guys show up, all we want to do is test and pilot and test and pilot. So the business side has gained a deeper appreciation to that approach. And I think the digital folks across the organization or the technology teams have definitely come to a point of maturity where adopting management practices around lean and agile have started to harmonize that balance, so that the executives and the management teams have really been able to understand where the future of not just their industry is going, but where's the art of possible. Yeah. So is Facebook in the future going to be your insurance company? Maybe, maybe not. But they definitely recognize that non-traditional players are driving that customer expectation, right? In the digital space, your expectation is what your last interaction was. So if loading something on Netflix took 1 second, coming to your bank website should take 1 second.
Yeah.
So that's really a kind of a moving target for us. But I think if you take the customer-centric approach, you may stumble, you may go a little longer than you originally planned, but at the end, you're going to have meaningful outcomes. And I think that's really a big part for us around finding the right partners in these ecosystems. So I'm sure we'll address some of the people parts, but that's a big, so how to get it done. Now the next one is who to get it done.
Yeah. So you're saying is that, you know, coming in from anchoring it from a perspective where everybody understands, and you gave an example about anchoring it around customer experience and rallying the whole technology folks and all the business folks around that. So That's good. Now you mentioned about insurance, you mentioned about banking, and obviously, banking and insurance is a big part of the Hong Leong Group. So I'm going to ask you a question that's kind of related to what YB Isa mentioned just now, and may put you in a spot then. That is a highly regulated environment, and many had argued that banking would have been disrupted a lot faster and in a more profound way if it had not been a regulated industry. So let me ask you the question about the role of regulators. Do you see that there is ever going to be a balancing act where they are able to play both the enabling role as well as the regulatory role?
So I think technology and global innovation, it's unrealistic to expect that regulators or the rule makers can ever keep pace with the emerging trends and technologies. However, I've seen that the regulators have taken a much more open approach towards collecting feedback from industry, from experts, in order to help drive policy reform. So whether it's concepts around sandboxing, where you can work with your partner in a regulated environment, you can work hand in hand with the regulators, that they become aware of what controls become important, and how does this technology, what's the impact long-term going to look like? So, for example, here in Malaysia, the regulators have just conditionally approved cloud providers to start operating in regulated environments, which is highly encouraging because that simply increases the pace at which we can innovate. So the other side is the regulators have an impossible job of cutting through the hype. So with all of these startups that we're talking about, their job is to sell solutions. And in a lot of cases, those solutions may not have a place within those markets. So regulators need to be open on one side and cautiously optimistic on the other.
Yeah, and that is the kind of balancing act that we were talking about. And I guess the jury is still out as to whether there could ever be a winning formula, or it could just be an iterative process. But I think what you mentioned is that if there is a discussion, if there is a forum for the regulators regulators regulate for a purpose, which is about the safety and about the privacy of its citizens. So if there is this, the pivot or the anchor around regulating for a purpose, and there is an open discussion, there is a forum to be able to dialogue in a constructive manner with the private sectors, perhaps this is something that could, that could land into this balance, into this optimum balance that we spoke about. And I guess this is what YB Isa was mentioning about, which is creating this kind of innovation zones. In a way, it is a sandbox. It's a formalized sandbox that people can go in, and there is this kind of policy interaction around the policies around it. So thank you, Ben, for those perspectives. Now, I want to move on to Shanghai. Let's go to Shanghai and let's talk to Jason. Jason, now you are in a very, very exciting world, which is the world of both EV as well as AV, autonomous vehicles and electronic vehicles. Now, share with us now, you talk about regulatory. This is where one of the highest, industry that is impacted through regulatory environment. So please share with us what is happening right now in this market. How is it developing? What's the outlook for the industry? And what are the latest trends that is driving the EV and AV industries, and who's leading the game? Is it the car manufacturers, or is it the technology companies, or is it the combination of both?
I want to say that autonomous driving is a very comprehensive topic. From the engineering, AI is one of the most important parts in it. In general, autonomous driving can be classified into different levels, say level 1 to level 5, according to the SAE standard. For level 1 to level 2, AV plays a assistive role to get the driver partly relieved from the labor of driving. For level 3 and above, the AV has to be able to act on its own, which relies more and more heavily on AI-related technology. In automotive industry, driving assist system is sort of increasingly becoming a standard configuration for lately released models. especially when combined with electric drive vehicles. And in China, even some low-end EVs have features like automatic emergency braking, lane keep assistance, and adaptive cruise control or automatic parking, etc. For some more advanced car models, driver is allowed to release their hand and foot under some specified environments and conditions, like highway pilot and traffic jam, just like what Tesla has done. As AV actually promotes user experience and it thus creates user value, most automotive companies, including We Innovate, have set out our plans to invest for further development in this field because we take it as the next key point of future growth. On the technical side, Tesla insists on pure visual solutions to realize autonomous driving. They use data plus AI to do visual recognition and maneuver operations and still possesses leading positions in the techniques. While globally, for most other companies, other sensors like millimeter wave radar and laser-based LiDAR are also used to guarantee more comprehensive sensing of driving environment, and which, by the way, I personally believe extra sensors will still be quite necessary in a long time. About high-level autonomous driving, I've got the chance to take test rides on several robotaxis of different companies. I can say that the experience is amazing. The car can drive by itself for 1 hour and can handle smoothly, just like a human driver, under very complex situations. But to be rational, the robotaxi can only be operated within certain areas, and assisted by a recorded high-definition map, endurance and lifetime of the components under hard conditions, the uncertainty under complex scenarios, and the corner case the pre-training process are all obstacles that hold back high-level autonomous driving from actually putting massive application. And AI can be widely applied throughout the processes like object and obstacle recognition, sensor fusion, planning, and decision-making. Technologies in this field, like machine learning and deep learning, is growing rapidly during the recent years. And I noticed that many startups is playing an important role in the game, as it doesn't require heavy asset investment. Basically, some high-performance computing resource and some talented brains will work well. So I won't say it's doubtlessly leading the game, because there are many different aspects to talk about. Hardware like chips, sensors, LiDARs, software like operating systems, algorithms, condition barriers. Even the innovation doesn't have to happen in the automotive industry. So as an OEM should be good at integration and testing of techniques, while for other each specific field, different companies also contribute a lot. Some startups can also stand at cutting edge point and provide state-of-the-art productions and services.
Okay. All right. Okay, Jason. So, the AV market, the AV market in particular, it is relatively new. It's however, it is really, really maturing at a very, very fast rate. And we know that the dominant players, the key players, are from North America, obviously, and we see a lot of new players coming from China as well, such as yourself, as your company. There is a fierce war right now. There is this big competition, right? So let me ask you, for a small country like Malaysia, who has this legacy of having our own, building our own national cars, do you think that there is a place for a country like Malaysia to carve a niche for ourselves in this AV industry, and if so, how do you think that can be done?
Yes, as you have mentioned, North America have very important high technology companies like Tesla, and also for its ability to incubate high-end technology in areas like Silicon Valley. And also it have rich academia resources. Just as mentioned before, AV requires technologies from many fields, most of which technically doesn't have to be fully developed by the manufacturer. In my opinion, it may be effective to encourage auto companies to integrate level 2 to level 3 AV technologies, satisfy or even create user experience on autonomous driving. That means companies should first cooperate with existing technology vendors at application level. And then the flourish of AI applications may, on the other hand, economically boost the back-end research and development. High-quality datasets are essential for the development and the deployment of AI systems. However, this must be respectful of the diversity and non-discrimination. Sharing data and protecting data is equally important. Data collection and protection shall be taken into consideration by the government.
Okay, all right. And, we were talking about regulations and regulatory policies for the purpose of safety. And obviously, autonomous vehicles, it really would have a big impact on citizens' safety. So therefore, regulatory policies will play a very key role. Now, if you have a state of Johor, for instance, as mentioned by our honorable state assemblyman, wants to create this special innovation zone, which is able to carve out special policies to enable innovations such as autonomous vehicles. What kind of policies do you think is needed or can be put in place to spur growth of the AV industry in Malaysia and in particular, in the state of Johor, where there is this vision for this special innovation zone? What do you think? What kind of policies? Maybe you can share with us what China has put in place to spur AV innovation.
Yes, I think there is a lot of things that can be done. First, I think it's important to establish a dedicated authoritative bodies or committee is to coordinate and ensure coherent and consistent AV regulation. Next, I think we can participate in international working groups that is currently committed to developing AV standards and to develop some national or local regulations and standards to regulate the application of AV features. Another thing is it's good to launch a series of incentives like preferential licensing, registration of vehicles, traffic law enforcement, safety inspections, insurance and liability, etc. Unnecessary restrictions, limited area or specified road lane, give permission of autonomous driving, or prioritize the road access should be a good way to promote AV application. Launch a demonstration run within 13 areas for high-level autonomous driving might be a good choice. To do that, the government should prepare the infrastructure like high-definition map for AV and install some roadside telecommunication unit or intelligent facilities. And while most countries still pondering on the AV framework, like issues like legal liability between the car and driver or some ethical issues, I think make more aggressive autonomous driving policies and regulations should be helpful to encourage application of new technologies. But provided that necessary safety limitations have been made clear. And finally, I think it's good to establish an open, ongoing discourse between the industry, the academia, and the research institutes.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like there is a lot of work to be done, but it also sounds like there is a lot of collaboration and there's a lot of work also that's currently being worked on both at international levels and at individual country levels. So Wabi, Honorable State Assemblyman Izha, we hope to see autonomous cars on the streets of Johor soon through this innovation zone that you're talking about, and I do want to volunteer to be one of those autonomous pilots. Now, I think my last question with something that would cut across, I think would really resonate well amongst the countries in Southeast Asia, in particular in Malaysia. And I want to ask this question to Benjamin. It is around manufacturing. As you know, manufacturing is a pillar of economic importance in most of Southeast Asian countries. And manufacturing also is one which is under tremendous pressure in terms of having to innovate towards this Industrial Revolution 4.0. There is a bucket of technologies that can be deployed, AI, IoT, and so on. But do you think that the manufacturing sector has done enough in terms of transforming itself into IR 4.0? And maybe you can speak from the Hong Leong, because I know Hong Leong Group has got many manufacturing companies under its portfolio. You know, has there enough been done? Is the industry really, you know, pacing well behind? And what does it take, do you think, for it to be accelerated?
Excellent. That's a great question. As a group, we're still in the process of formulating our strategy with regards to the adoption scale for IR 4.0. As we have high-tech manufacturing, we have high levels of automation and the IoT systems, AI, etc. And in our heavy manufacturing, it's slightly more slower moving. However, we found opportunities around quality assurance that really have made a differentiation. And I think industry at large, you'll see the adoption around where you can bring in competitive advantage. So cost reduction, of course, a lot to do with your raw material acquisitions. So sourcing strategies have a lot of, I think, opportunity in them. And as we look at the manufacturing process and supply chain components, there's definitely areas around efficiencies that can be brought in. However, when we look at the high-tech end of the spectrum, making the chips and the components for those EV vehicles, there's absolutely a great deal of high-tech innovation that happens in that space.
Okay. All right. So I think you're saying the same, you know, anchor it around business outcomes, you know, like quality assurance, as well as cost optimization and so on. So
absolutely.
So before we go, I would like to complete our perspectives, and this time it is from the angle of a very important driver of innovation, which is the venture capital or the innovation capital. And I'm pleased to welcome, also from Shanghai, Mr. Andrew Shen of New Access Capital. Andrew is the chairman and the founder of New Access Capital, and he's currently managing 7 RMB VC funds with a total asset under management of renminbi 1.5 billion. So Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Now, AI startups, especially those in the deep learning technology, are getting a lot of attention from VC funds all over the world. And I quoted earlier stats from Crunchbase to state that in the year 2018, the funding size for AI companies grew by 72%, and it is continuing to grow. And you are right in the middle of all of this. So Andrew, can you share with us what are some of the more recent and more exciting developments that you are seeing in this space?
Yes, I'm very pleased to be invited to the panel. I've been doing venture capital in China for the past 2 decades. I returned from the Wall Street of New York by the end of 1919 and joined SoftBank to launch its first venture capital fund in China. And the first deal that we made $20 million investment into a Hangzhou-based local internet company. And that company turned out to be Alibaba. And this first investment in the Series A round investment in the local Chinese internet company happened to be one of the most successful VC investment deals of all times, not only in the history of China, but also in the world, because it generates thousands times of returns. So back to the moderator's question on the AI. AI almost blew up, grew very fast in the past 5 years. And particularly after AlphaGo beat the world champion and caught the world attention. But these 2 or 3 years in China, AI companies are experiencing some kind of pain. From 3 years ago, 4 years ago, AI companies came out to do the fundraising with very high valuation and concept. So everybody, all the VCs bought the story and invested heavily into the AI startups. But in the past 3 years, how AI as a technology can be combined with commerce and generate revenues, and so becomes a profitable business, it's a big challenge. And therefore, we see a lot of AI companies are phasing out. So this could be the winter time for a lot of AI startup companies. So WAIC, W-A-I-C, which was launched several years ago. I remember going into the first WAIC. I was the judge of the AI competition. 8 or 10 of those startups. I hope half of them are still surviving today. So it's a big challenge for AI, for startup, for entrepreneurs at the moment. However, a few of them are becoming bigger and bigger. And so this industry, AI industry, is under very fast consolidation. So the big will go bigger and bigger, and for IPO or SPAC, and but a lot of them are struggling. So that's the reality of this AI industry at the moment from a VC perspective.
That's very interesting, Andrew. So what you're saying is that over the last 3 to 4 years, there was almost this whole euphoria or excitement about AI. So it's
Yes.
almost like you can throw anything and you put the name AI behind it and people will invest. But that bubble has burst. So people now are looking for real technology, real companies to invest in. And I guess that is where people like you will come in. I mean, you're one of the people, the Series A funding for Alibaba. Oh, wow. I mean, and I also saw that in the year 2016, you got the award for the best investor of the year. So then which brings me to the question of, now, Andrew, what would you look out for now? How do you differentiate between the babies and the grown-up in the landscape of AI startup company? How would you differentiate the real people who can, like you say, grow, and who are the ones that will just go away?
Yes, it's a very good question. How to select from tens of thousands of AI startups, and then make a bet on 1 or 2 of them, and grow together with them to become a successful AI technology company. That's my homework that I have to do. So in the past couple of years, we launched a training camp called the A-Round class. We trained, first of all, those AI entrepreneurs. They came to our training camp, and it was this is a 3-month training courses that teach. We invite a lot of VC veterans to be the teachers or instructors to teach the entrepreneurs how to develop a good business model, how to look for your partners, co-founders, how much equity that you should give out to your partners, and how to have a good product map strategy, how to develop your product from a prototype to a product, how to market to your customer. Because most of those AI companies are to B, not to C companies. So unlike internet companies like Alibaba or Tencent, these are 2C companies. But AI companies are mostly 2B companies. So how to deal with big business, how to do business with other business. This is the kind of thing that those entrepreneurs should learn very quickly in our training camp. And out of this training camp, we try to observe and then how to select good potentials. And we invested in a couple of them. And the results so far are pretty good.
I see.
And so after the investment, we grow together, we help them to raise the next round so that the companies will continue on the right path with the right people and with sufficient capital. This is very important.
So Andrew, that is so interesting. And that is a rather different perspective than what I normally am familiar with, which is, you know, startups will just go and pitch to VCs, and the VCs, you will look into all those application, and you would just make a bet on 1 or 2 out of the 10 and hope that these 2 would succeed and 8 would not. But you investing into the time and to help them figure out how to create the value and how to build the business model. That is very interesting. So do you think that this is how the industry will move towards this kind of very nurturing kind of approach?
Yes, you are absolutely right, Jasmine. The conventional wisdom for venture capital is what I call the hunting business model, right? You stay low with a gun, with a rifle, you look for your target.
Yeah.
But for us, it's a different business model. I become a farmer.
Yes.
I grow orchid trees, the apple trees first. And when the fruits are ripe, according to the Newton, the law of gravity, the apples won't fly, it will fall. And the farmers will recoup the fruits of your harvest.
I see.
So you nurture, you coach, you do the farming work. So for us, in America, in the US, there is such a model called the Y Combinator, the YC model.
Yes.
For us, we are the Chinese version of the YC model.
Okay, that's interesting. And in a way, I'm from SkyMine, and we have the same philosophy. We have a SkyMine Ventures, which was launched from our UK office, and we believe in the same thing. We believe in the fact that we have to venture build. So we have our technology, and we help them with the market access. We'll help them build the business model. So I'm very happy to hear that, because it is rather a globalized innovation ecosystem. And SkyMine, with a very big footprint in China, we do understand what's happening in China, and Malaysia being a possible gateway. We are already a gateway to the rest of the region, right? So how do you see that the future? How do you see the collaboration? What can we do together? Malaysia and China. And you may have heard earlier that there is an earlier speaker from our southern state of Johor that talks about the setting up of a SkyMine Innovation City, which is going to be in Johor, 3 hours drive to Kuala Lumpur and 20 minutes drive to Singapore, an economic powerhouse. And our state assemblyman has given the commitment that the government will put its commitment behind it and make sure that there is a policy that is forward-looking, a policy that will enable innovation. So how do you think companies in China, the startups in China, is able to benefit from something like this?
That sounds very exciting. I think, first of all, AI development is a global trend. Yes. So it's going to be global, not only for one country like China. It's global. And secondly, I think Malaysia plays a very important role in Southeast Asia. And Southeast Asia, and it's part of Asia. We play soccer in the same league, in the Asian League. So we are in the same region. of China, of Asia. And thirdly, I think that like today's panel, it's a very good beginning. At least, people from different countries in the region sit down and have interesting discussions about the AI developments, the technology, and the future. So I hope that this will continue and will be more productive. Apart from the panel, we can do a little bit more.
Thank you. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew. We are hosting SkyMind. We are doing our inaugural WAIC, the Southeast Asia chapter this year. And it's good to hear from you as you were there from the very beginning. So we will look forward to more productive discussions around how AI can benefit both countries and the region and globally. So thank you so much, Andrew, for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of our panel session. You've heard from the panelists how it is no longer about whether AI will be implemented. Just 3 years ago, people were still wondering and considering, and AI was being spoken in very much at a conceptual stage. But just 3 years down the road, where we are right now, you heard from all the panelists, from the private sector, from a conglomerate like Hong Leong, who is really saying that this is something that has to be done. He has spoken all the way at the boardroom level, and with that kind of focus, it will drive through the implementation and the execution of AI. You've heard from an innovator, somebody who is pioneering and really spearheading innovation in the area of autonomous vehicles, and how the barriers of entry, or the barriers towards AI implementation has significantly been broken and significantly been lowered over the years. And we heard an interesting perspective from a very ambition and the great vision from a state of Johor, which holds so much potential, being where they are at the center, at the epicenter of economic powerhouses in the region, and how they are open towards innovating policies as well. And the understanding that policy is a very important enabler towards innovations. Before we end, perhaps we can just go around the panelists for your closing remarks. Maybe we can start off with State Assemblyman Izhar.
Thank you very much for this morning sessions. I was really great, and I feel honored being called to participate in these sessions. And I hope with SkyMind and Innovate that it will really boost to spin our economy in our states. And I look forward that we are ready to facilitate you all. Then I hope it will materialize. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Honorable State Assemblyman. Maybe we move on to Ben. Closing remarks from you, Ben.
Absolutely. I know that technology moves very fast, and businesses need long-term strategies to be able to impress their shareholders, stakeholders, customers, etc. And I think walking the balance between where innovation and business applicability lies is really in today's focus of most boardroom conversations. I think the merging of understanding that we need to move faster, and can we look towards partnerships, whether it's with governments, regulators, universities, and everything in the ecosystem that makes up digital innovation. And at the heart of that, where is AI going to take us, is a very exciting time. So thank you very much for today.
Thank you, Ben. And Jason, closing remarks from you, Jason.
Okay, first, I think I'm very honored to have this opportunity to join the session. AI is a complex ecosystem. It should include many aspects like scientific research, skills education, data sourcing, talent development, legislation, and any ethical considerations. But the technology is really moving very fast, and the barriers to working on AI is getting lower and lower for today's world. For us, I think we should just open our arms to hug this new era with AI.
All right. Thank you so much. So Andrew, can you share with us some closing remarks?
Sure. I think today's theme of the panel is about AI technology development in China, in Asia, and in the world. So globalization is the AI trend, number one. Number two, how to win the heart. How can this technology win the heart of young people? And how can this technology be productized and have a good user experience? That's second, very important. And thirdly, how to win the support of capital and make people like me, venture capitalists, work for you. That's also something that AI should think very hard about. I think with all these three combined, AI will have an even better future for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for those closing remarks. And with that, we've come to the end of our session. It has been very clear that the rapid rise of AI will continue and its economic impact will be profound. And with that, companies, governments will have to look at different ways of doing things to unleash this power of AI. Thank you, and we hope to see you in future sessions of WAIC.